Welcome to our news segment from the Roll for Crit podcast. This week, we were joined by the host of the Revamp podcast, as well as his own board game review YouTube channel, Tim Chuon. Let's see what we have to say about the news from this week, October 18th, 2021.
Some stuff that's been going on recently regarding Paizo. Paizo, the RPG designers of Pathfinder, who not D&D Beyond that we used to create our Roland F. Criterion, who is now world famous and everybody loves, but a different RPG studio. And they've been having all kinds of issues in regards to their employees and the way that they treat them. We've been talking at length about all the issues that have been going on there, not cleaning the offices, firing certain employees with perhaps unjustified cause, as we've heard it. Lots of horror stories coming out of there. And now a bunch of Paizo workers have come together to form a Paizo union. They are calling it, as you would, United Paizo Workers. And they made an extended announcement through their new Twitter account at Paizo Workers on Twitter, explaining what they're going for with this, who all the members are, and what they hope to accomplish as a result of this new movement. So, Tim, I don't know if you've been following all this Paizo stuff. What do you think about a Paizo union? Because this is pretty rare in the tabletop industry. There aren't too many unions out there. In fact, I don't know of any others. Certainly not as prominent as under a company like Paizo. Does this seem like is this a sign of hope for you, that this seems like a good thing going forward?
I mean, I don't know too much about it, and this is, like you said, this is my first time hearing about a union as well in the board game industry. But I'm hoping that it's, for the best and they find some kind of consensus there.
Yeah. It sounds like there's no official, at least they haven't talked about any demands that they have or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right now there's the IATSE, I think is how you pronounce it, the film crew union that's been basically ready to strike. I don't think they've actually gone on strike yet. I think they're trying to work out deals. But there's a lot of that kind of thing going around right now. I guess here's a question I'll go to Will now. What kind of, do you expect them to have demands? Do you think we might see strikes out of this, or is this more of a protective measure?
When I first heard of this, I was a little confused, only because I remember a little while back there was that Amazon warehouse that tried to make a union and failed. So I'm like, how did this work? This much I did find out. So they're not they've agreed to be a union, but the way it works is they're calling on Paizo to voluntarily recognize them. Be like, yes, you're a union. If they don't, that's what happened with Amazon. You have to hold an election, and a certain number of the workers have to approve it. Apparently, the people signed on have already reached that eligibility, most likely. So it seems like it's already a guarantee. So that's why the one thing I was confused about. And what I've read, I don't know if this is like an official declaration, but I'm hearing that there are multiple freelancers refusing to work on projects until, it says, the article I'm reading here, meet certain demands, including the hiring of a diversity officer.
Okay.
So I think there are some things. I don't know if it's because they haven't done the official agreement. Maybe that's why they don't have the official, this is what our union demands kind of thing. But according to some of those stories that I think we talked about a little while back, hopefully one of them is a janitorial staff.
Yeah, there are some issues with the carpet wasn't cleaned?
I don't think the entire building was cleaned.
Like nothing had been cleaned for 2 years or something. Like, it was really
it was like 5. It was something like horrific.
Yeah, not so good. Yeah, I imagine I'm sure they have behind the scenes concepts of what they want to ask for, but they're maybe not ready to share those publicly quite yet. And hopefully with the statement that we heard out of the higher ups at Paizo, it sounds like they would be open to this and they'll be amenable to having these discussions. Of course, that might not always hold true. And if this is successful, I think it would be great if we see this going forward with other companies. I have to imagine. Unfortunately, I just don't have enough knowledge about these things to talk more about it. But I would think if anyone that like Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast are so big, I'd imagine they might have some kind of a union in place already. But I actually don't know that. And I, as a great podcast host, I didn't research it because it just occurred to me just now. But or any other companies, especially the bigger ones, Asmodee, different like those big ones, seem like this could be something that's beneficial for the workers going forward. Of course.
I don't think there is a union at Wizards, and I feel like it's more likely because Paizo is smaller. Like since Wizards is owned by Hasbro, I think if they tried to unionize, I would imagine it would go more the way Amazon did. Like I feel like they'd be willing to throw their money around. But yeah. I've also heard, but like, yeah, I'm just quick Google and all these things saying like, will Wizards of the Coast follow and stuff. So it doesn't seem likely, but
I don't know how that works since Hasbro owns them. Like, would the union be under Hasbro employees? I guess it depends on how you decide to organize it. It could be either one, I suppose. Like I said, I don't know. I know about board games, not unions. But generally speaking, from what I understand, I think it's a very positive thing. And
I think it would be under Wizards because it would be more like the artists of Wizard. Usually, I think most unions I know of tend to like they're almost around a profession. I guess would be the word.
Right. They're less specific to a company, and it's like, again, like the film workers union or like the teachers union or police union. It's not like a, so that's interesting. I wonder if they would expand it to, it'll just be role-playing game union or even tabletop games union. Maybe anyone who's like a designer or has worked for a game company. I mean, God knows what kind of legal red tape you have to go through to make that happen, but maybe that maybe is the ideal solution if somebody could make that work. But it's a big deal. This is a big businessy business thing that's happening. And it's the kind of thing that it's not a story that we hear about often. As we said, this is like one of the first ones that we know of, but it could have really big ramifications for the industry and for people who work in the industry going forward. So
yeah, hopefully it ends better than the Amazon one that I talked about earlier. That would it'd be nice to see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Now next up, there's a few new game announcements that I wanted to talk about that I think are kind of cool and exciting. A couple of them, some stuff coming out of Essen, which just happened last week. There is a third King of Tokyo game on the way, we've learned. This is, of course, Richard Garfield, published by IELLO Games. This one we don't know much about, don't even have a title. It looks like there's some kind of a crustacean-like creature as one of the new headlining monsters, but we don't know much more beyond that. There's also a new Resident Evil card game, which is cooperative. You're playing through the original Resident Evil video game and board game form as either Jill or Chris, and players take turns controlling them going through the mansion. And then they also announced a Heroes of Might and Magic 3 board game, which is not coming into Kickstarter until next year, November 2022, but based on the old strategy PC game. That's has been pretty popular amongst that crowd. Tim, of these three, are you excited about any of these? Are these licenses or properties that you are familiar with and you think they could do cool new things with?
I am not familiar with. I think it's with King of Tokyo. I've always seen it at Barnes and Noble, but I've never picked it up. And Resident Evil, I've always played the video game, but never in card game form. I think that one would be the most interesting to me. To see how it plays out in like the horror genre with card games.
Yeah. It sounds interesting. There's been Steamforge did the Resident Evil board games, but those are like these giant minis and like multiple scenarios, and this looks like just like a condensed small version of just that first game. They said their inspiration for that one was passing the controller back and forth. That's why you're just controlling one character between the two of you. Does
Okay.
that seem like I don't know. Does that sound fun to you, or would you rather be everybody play as themselves? Or what's your ideal Resident Evil board game look like?
Uh, I don't know. I feel like I know, like you mentioned that it was one with minis, but with card games, I feel like it'd be so interesting to have some kind of storytelling involved, especially with like solo play, to see different campaigns unveil, kind of like Marvel Champions. But it
Mhm.
would be an interesting take to see overall.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think? Well, Resident Evil card game. We played
I
the Resident Evil deck
Yeah.
building game before.
Mhm.
The passing of the controller in a game like Resident Evil, like the reason why I think it works really well there is because of the not just the live action, I guess you say, of the video games, but I usually think like especially in horror games because you hit that point like I'm done, I need a break.
Yeah, that's for us
But
certainly. We're scared.
Right.
when it comes to board game, I think actually the better way if you want that feeling would be what you brought up with the story. Like this War of Mine, I think works really. I think captured that for us when the two of us played together because you have to discuss what decision are we going to make.
Mhm.
That isn't just shoot zombie.
Hey, in this one you can attack or flee.
True. So if there's some more story thing, I mean, it is possible because they say you can meet different people along the way. Maybe you can decide different outcomes than what happened in the game. So I'm curious to say the least, and whatever this new game plus stuff is.
Yeah, apparently if you beat it, you unlock a new game plus. I don't know if that just means like you get a harder zombies or exactly how it works. It'd be kind of neat if they took inspiration from the remake and they had like the crimson heads when the zombies come back to life if you don't set them on fire.
Oh
Maybe
God.
that's the harder mode or something.
Actually, that's a good point. When you say like harder zombies, do you prefer in like games in general, especially campaign games, do you prefer like cranked up difficulty or new content?
Are we thinking of board games, video games, or just in general?
Board games.
Yeah, new content for me
Yeah.
always. That's
I'm definitely in the new content one, partially because I when it comes to playing a board game, especially these, and if they get really difficult, the annoying thing is unlike a video game, especially newer ones where you can literally just change the difficulty, maybe like mid boss fight or something. It's like, well, we got to reset the entire table.
right.
It's
Yeah.
so much more work when I'm like, I just want to know what's going on. Yeah, I'm one of those lazy people who's there for the boat ride.
No, that's me too, 100%. It's like such a daunting task, like set up all over again.
Yeah, definitely. A good difficulty mode can, add replay value and stuff, but I could probably count on my one hand the number of times I've actually gone back to a game and been like, oh, now let me try super hard level. I could say like more, I think I would do that with a solo experience because then it's more
Mhm.
like, oh, it's like I'm getting a high score, I'm challenging myself, and usually they're simpler. But yeah, especially if it's like a co-op game, a multiplayer kind of experience. Maybe this sounds like you could play it with just one person actually, but uh, um, you want
Mhm.
new things is always better. Of course, it's also harder for the developers to to do. So
Right.
there's that little
Mhm.
caveat. Never played King of Tokyo, Tim.
No.
It's a real. Yeah, that's one
I
of
don't.
those.
Yeah, I think considering all the games that everyone else yells at us for not playing, I don't know if we can throw any shade about that. But
But hey,
I,
this might be your chance because in addition to this third game, they also announced a new Monster Box collection, which has a couple
they're
expansions in
so
it.
bad about this.
You mean the 18 different editions of King of Tokyo that come out
Well,
every other
yeah,
year?
well, what they do is it's like, look, this new big monster box it has the core set and all the expansions. Where I'm like, okay, I don't have this. Like, plus just a couple of new things, and I'm like, oh, are you
Oh yeah, they
serious?
got to entice you with that.
But I'll say that the picture of the new stuff. If you didn't say anything, just tell me. I would assume it's like just a new monster. They do the
Right.
little monster packs, but I assume, judging by this article, someone has told them, yes, it's a new game.
Yes, it is
So
confirmed officially. Yes.
if I had to guess, based on their pattern and how they they take homage from monster movies, that this is going to be their Monster Island game.
That would be cool.
So I guess the little monsters could be points. It's got to have I think more of a, instead of maybe holding one place, maybe holding multiple territory. Could be it.
All right.
Just like monsters fighting over the island.
All right. Sure. This is your official prediction. It's set in stone. We'll find out. The game comes out next year at some point. No, Might and Magic fans. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 specifically, which I find funny because I don't know why they don't just. Maybe it's a rights thing. They just got the rights to the third game, but it's funny they don't just call it Heroes of Might and Magic. I never played them myself, but I know they're pretty popular. This is from Archon Studio, who is also, they did the Wolfenstein game. They've done a few others that were pretty big on Kickstarter. So presumably it's going to be a big old game with all kinds of factions and combat and stuff. Heroes of Might and Magic is very board gamey already. It's one of those kinds of games, almost like a Sid Meier's Civilization or something like that. So not a Civilization game, but sort of in that vein that it kind of feels like a board game, video game. So it does seem like a very one-to-one connection. But I'm sure people who are fans of that will be excited about it. All right, so there's a few new games for you. We also heard from some award winners. A few months back, we talked about the Zenobia Awards. And these are given to independent games that specifically have a historical, cultural kind of message or perspective to present. And the winners for this year's Zenobia Awards, first place went to a game called Tyranny of Blood, which is about the Indian caste system and British colonialism, all that fun stuff. Second place went to Winter Rabbit, which is about Cherokee culture. And then finally, one that I'm not totally sure how to say, but Winye Kase, perhaps, which takes place in Machu Picchu. And three very different independent games. The thing that frustrates me about this is just that there's no information here, if that information even exists, as to how or when people can play these games if you're not a judge of this competition. Because I think they all sound very fascinating, but right now, if you're looking at it, it's just, you can read a snippet from the rule book and get a kind of a look at sort of the concept of it. But there's not even, I don't even see a link to, it'd be great if they had a link to follow the creators and just stay tuned to what they were doing. Tim, have you seen the Zenobia Award at all? Or what do you think about these games and this concept?
No, it's my first time hearing about the Zenobia Awards too. So how are they chosen exactly? Do you know?
So they have a group of judges.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly. They do say on their website who the judges are. So they have a whole list of the board members, just different people who work in game design and various board game adjacent roles. I see Cole Worley of Leader Games as one of them. So it seems like a reliable group of people, I would assume. But yeah, they play all these games, and after they've been submitted, and judge them.
Oh, so are these final games, or are they prototypes, or?
That is a great question. According to the website, the art that they show is prototype only. Mm-hmm. And I know there are a couple, you can find a couple playthroughs of some of these if you search for them out there, but I don't think there is I don't think any of them are in a published packaged form. So yeah, I think they all would be considered prototypes or print and plays, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
They are grouped with a bunch of publishers. Maybe these are the winners, and they're like, "We'll make these games."
That would make sense.
Maybe that would be cool. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it's a neat thing, and it definitely is. I think the part that's frustrating for me is I'm like, oh, this is, we talked about these before, and I said, oh, it's great that we're seeing, we're shedding light on different kinds of board games. I love the idea of these games that actually have something important to say. And that isn't just the same themes we see all the time and are interesting and historical and all that. But then it's like, but how do I play them? I'm just like, yay, congratulations, game that I now will never get to see. But maybe there will be, and yes, I see they are all prototypes. So I guess going forward, these designers will kind of be able to use this as clout.
Oh,
Maybe they'll approach publishers with them. Mhm.
the schedule, literally last one. Winners and runner-ups are announced and prizes awarded. Preparation of pitches to publisher begins.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah. Okay.
There you go. So we do not know yet. So some of these might never see the light of day outside of this. It's very possible.
Oh.
But hopefully they're able to swing these into a win somewhere. They're all very, like I said, just very creative and different ideas. Like every single description of one of the nominees is something that I would never expect to see a game based on. So I think that's really cool. But we'll put a link to the full list, and you can stay tuned. And I guess the best place then is to stay tuned to the Zenobia Word website to see if they update us on the progress of these games getting published. And finally, in the news section, we are saying rest in peace to Brian Goldner, who was executive over at Hasbro, a pretty big company that we've mentioned just now, who died at the age of 58. We don't have a specific cause of death, but he was diagnosed with prostate cancer a few years back, so it seems likely that is the ultimate cause. And just reading about what this guy has done, it seems like his biggest contribution, or one of them, to Hasbro was moving them into the film and television business outside of just toys. And that's going to include stuff that we have yet to see, but we know is in the works from the board game world. Dungeons and Dragons, Risk, and Clue all had TV shows and or movies that are scheduled to come out. That sounds like he's ultimately responsible for. But it's kind of a cool legacy, even though I think we would probably all agree that the Hasbro films have been hit or miss, to put it charitably. It certainly made them money. So as far as doing his job well, I think he knocked it out of the park.
It did a little bit better with the shows, at the least. And I think that might have been because he didn't get their own studio until, when was it again? I can't remember.
Recently they started producing their own content, so they wouldn't have to rely on other companies and everything like that.
Which definitely helps, because I don't know who was in charge of Battleship, but
but they were great. Is that what you're gonna say?
Absolutely, I can't think of a better movie.
Who doesn't love Battleship? Tim, what are your feelings about D&D, like TV shows and movies based on these classic board game properties? Is that something that interests you, or not at all?
I mean, 100%. Like, there are so many board games like Lords of Hellas I would love to see on film. But like you said, the reiterations right now of a couple of different games turned movies haven't been the best. Like, I think the most recent one I saw from Hasbro was Snake Eyes. And it was a hard one to sit down for.
Yeah, I didn't see Snake Eyes, but I heard a lot about it.
Even though it sponsored all your Hostage Negotiator streams.
Yeah, I had a Hostage Negotiator stream where I kept rolling Snake Eyes, so I decided they were sponsoring us that week.
The thing they really need to do, because they've got properties that have had good stories every now and then, but usually when I see the good stories happen is because they almost just like sort of give it to one or two guys and just like, do what you will. We don't care, because usually it's in a comic or something. It's not a big budget movie. So then they're like, all right, we're going to now make it so Megatron becomes a pacifist or something really weird like that. And I think when you look at all these movies like Snake Eyes or something, there's all these people like, how do we make it appeal to the biggest audience, which makes it like the most bland thing usually ever.
Yeah.
And I think that is where they tend to fail.
Yeah, because like they just like go at it, and sometimes I wonder if there's an actual team behind it and how certain things make it all the way to the big screen. So
yeah,
right. You never feel I feel like a lot of the movies or shows we like, or even board games, you feel the fingerprint of the game designer or the director in there. The only thing I can tell you is with the Transformers movies is explosions. Like that is the closest we have.
I mean, you feel the Michael Bay fingerprints in there for sure.
Yeah, but not in the story beats.
I mean,
Like, I'm curious to know if that's all they think that the audiences look for is like just giant explosions and just action sequences without substance.
Oh, it worked for 5 or 6 movies at least. So
Yeah, that's true.
Fair enough. I guess on a budget standpoint, it's mostly a success.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there is, bringing it back to tabletop games specifically, there's and relating it to the same way they did for Transformers, there's a legitimacy that you bring to something if there are movies made of it, whether we think they're good or bad.
I can't argue with that. I mean, there's a reason why they're doing all the like Disney's live action Lion King and stuff. It's more adult and real if it's live action.
Well, yeah, but even animated, just the fact that there is a film associated with it, like already, like there was never going to be, or maybe there already was. I actually don't know the timeline, but I feel like a Transformers ride at Universal Studios is much more likely to happen if there's a movie than if there's just toys.
Considering the only one I know of is based on the movies, I'm going to say you're right. And I mean, well, it's also just if it makes a lot of money, and hopefully, and I think it did in Transformers case, G.I. Joe has been failing on this front, but like it also made it so like, okay, we can make more toys now. We can make an Ark ship now. We can make the Beast Wars come back and stuff.
Right.
So,
but my ultimate point for relating to board games is that I think that could be a really important step for the board game industry. I mean, even though board games continue to grow in popularity every year and get more and more mainstream, once you start seeing in Dungeons and Dragons movie, you see a Risk. If there's a successful Risk show somehow, and then that spins off into people being able to say, okay, well, now we're going to take one of these other more modern games, and there's actually a really interesting story here. We could turn this into a movie and convince them to make that movie, and more people start playing the games, and it becomes even more mainstream. And I think that could be a very real stepping stone on the road to board games being as big as video games or something like that.
I mean, definitely Stranger Things helped the D&D cause.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. We'll see what happens. Obviously, it's been a very bumpy road, but with the Magic Netflix show too.
Right. Yeah. All that stuff is interesting. So anyway, but a lot of that stuff set in motion by Brian Goldner. So R.I.P. Hasbro executive Brian Goldner, and that is the end of our news roundup.
You have reached the end of the video, but before you go, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and maybe try to help us out on Patreon if you can. If you want to hear more from us, we've also got a podcast. This is released weekly, and there'll be links down below for wherever you want to listen to podcasts.